What's up, guys? It's Lefty here, and we are talking NFL Week 7. I'm going to run through the games, and how I'm going to do this is I'll give my number on the game from my power ratings. I'll discuss some market analysis and then some game theory on each game. And if you're unfamiliar with these terms or have never watched any of my game breakdowns, I'll explain quickly. When breaking down a game, I divide it into two parts. First one is technical analysis, or what I call market analysis. This is everything related to the market, from the timing of line moves, line history, from look-ahead lines to opening lines to current lines, finding patterns of when sharp books or square books adjust lines during impact points throughout the week. Even how the market perceives teams can all fall under market analysis. Next is fundamental analysis, or what I refer to as game theory. This is something most bettors are familiar with, and really it's just everything to do with the game itself, the on-field matchup, situational handicapping, travel, coaching, weather, injuries, talent. Anything to do with how you think the game will be played out is game theory. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into Week 7. I'll try to go quick. I don't want this video to be an hour long. No one's trying to sit through an hour-long video. We do have 6 teams on buys, so that'll help here. Panthers, Bengals, Cowboys, Texans, Jets, and Titans all on buys. No more undefeated teams in the league after Philly loses last week and San Fran. A lot of unders in Week 6. Actually, a lot of unders this season. Unders are hitting at a 61% or 60% win rate after the Jags game went over last night. But between this under trend so far and weather on the East Coast and QB uncertainty, it's been all under action on every game so far in Week 7. Only one game so far in Week 7 is up from the opener. Steelers-Rams are up 2 points from the opening total. It's the only game that's gone up. Every other game's trending down. Let's get into it now here. Falcons, Bucks here. Not a lot of movement on the side here, with Tampa Bay opening 2.5 at most books, and that's where it currently sits. No surprise we're seeing under money with how both defenses are playing here. Now, my power rating numbers, which are based on several different metrics that I think are important when measuring a team's ability. I post this doc weekly in the Betting Network Discord with my power ratings and a lot of other helpful data. I got like team tendency stuff. What else? I got just regular DVOA rankings. I even got some like positional unit rankings here too, which are kind of good for fantasy and whatnot. But all right, let's get into this. The Falcons. I have the Falcons where they 2.75 points below a league average team. All right, and then I have the Buccaneers here, 0.75 points below a league average team. When you combine these together, I make Tampa Bay minus 3.5 when you're factoring in home field advantage. And yeah, that's correct. Tampa Bay minus 3.5, factoring in home field advantage. The current line is right around 2.5. So I do show a little value on Atlanta here. Ritter getting a ton of hate. Last week, 3 turnovers, which cost them big time. I questioned before the game last week if Atlanta would be willing to switch up their run game and kind of go pass heavy. Ritter ended up having 47 attempts, I believe, 10 more attempts than any other game this season for Atlanta, but he threw 3 picks. So even though, passing on Washington is the right move, Ritter isn't the guy. When he's forced out of that game manager role, this is what happens. Last 3 drives for Atlanta last week went INT in the end zone, turnover on downs, and then INT. And Ritter's getting all the blame, which makes sense. He's the quarterback, but nobody's saying anything about Bijan Robinson, who had a 0.8% success rate in that game last week. That's hard to accomplish for a running back, having a success rate that low. He's definitely struggling there. Atlanta, kind of a tough team to back, but so is Tampa Bay. I talked about their numbers as a team in these like quick game previews I do each Sunday. Offensively, Tampa Bay is like boom or bust. Going into the game versus Detroit, the Bucks had the best EPA per play rating on third downs, and had the second best success rating on third downs. Third down is money down, so that should make Tampa Bay look very appealing. But Tampa Bay is always put in these third and long situations because of play calling. Their offensive coordinator Canales, for Tampa Bay, just runs the ball on first and second down every time. It's not like they have a solid running game with Ricard White, but he just continues to run the ball on first and second down. Canales calls the fewest pass plays, I should say, in the league on early downs of any offensive coordinator. And Baker Mayfield's just been finding ways to convert on third down, too, at an insanely high rate. It almost doesn't make sense either. And sure enough, last week it came crashing down to earth, just going 2 for 12 on third down conversions. Falcons have a defense I want to back, especially getting points. I'm going to have the Falcons in some teasers. I know that. And a prop I really like that I've been betting is under passing yards for any QB that's playing Atlanta. The Falcons have held every QB they face to their lowest passing yards of the season. And it starts with how good their defense is, but they're so methodical on offense, and they keep opposing offenses off the field. So I like Baker Mayfield a lot to go under 233.5, or that's what it was on Wednesday when I bet it. All right, let's keep it moving here. We got Raiders, Bears up next. We're going to be seeing two backup quarterbacks here with Aiden O'Connell for the Raiders and then Badgett for the Bears. It looks like the market trusts Aiden O'Connell more, with the majority of bets and money coming in on the Raiders. I have both these teams rated well below league average, with the Raiders 2.25 points below league average. And then I have the Bears 6.25 points below league average. So when you have two negative teams like this, you just subtract them. So taking 2.25 points from the Bears, 6.25 for the Raiders. And then when you factor in home field advantage, which I only give the Raiders a half point, I come up with a line of Raiders minus 2.5. That's a line I make for this game. And between the weather and, the backup quarterbacks in this game, the totals dropped a bunch here. Badgett, he's going to be a big drop off from Fields, obviously. And, we always see backups come in the game like unexpectedly and look better than they probably are. Then when they have a full week to prepare, they look like shit. Not saying Tyson Badgett looked great last week, but you'd think someone coming in cold unexpectedly off the bench, running off a playbook that's designed for Fields, it'd be all bad. But Badgett actually went 10 of 14 passing. He had a better passing game than Fields last week, and they basically played the same amount of time. There's so many situations like this where I want to bet against a team. Like the Raiders are primed to bet against this week, coming off a win, backup quarterback, laying points on the road, offense that lacks explosiveness. It's the perfect spot to bet against. But, and there's examples like this every week with perfect spots to bet against teams, either based on matchup or situationally, but their opponent just isn't good enough to exploit it. Every week I feel like I see 3 or 4 games like this. And as much as I want to bet against the Raiders, I just can't trust the Bears here with Badgett. All right, next game up, we got Browns, Colts. Colts have yet to name a starter, and it's another game with QB issues, really. Obviously, Minshew's the starter for the Colts with AR-15 done for the year. Browns QB still undecided, but reports came out yesterday or on Thursday. Watson was at practice. Something's going on with Watson, more than the injury, I feel like. The way they even reported it last week was weird. PJ Walker was bad, and, here's another situation where he had time to prepare. He was named the starter 5 days before the game, but didn't perform well. Granted, it was against the San Fran defense, and he did get the win, but wasn't a good showing. My power ratings on this one here, I make the Browns 1.5 points better than league average, and then I have the Colts 2 points below league average here. So when you factor in home field advantage, For the Colts are at home, so I make Cleveland minus 2.5 in this game. And this line actually moved on the news of Watson being at practice. This was Cleveland minus 2.5 um, pretty much all week, and now it's 3 across the board. If Watson is the starter, this line definitely has a ton of room to move. Total has dropped pretty significantly. Majority of books opened around 42.5, and it's down to 40.5 now. This could possibly be a letdown spot for Cleveland here. After like a huge all-in effort last week versus San Fran coming off a bye. Cleveland was coming off a bye, just relying on that defense. But a lot went right for the Browns versus San Fran. If this is another PJ Walker game here, I'm not sure how either offense scores. The Colts defensive front can definitely contain the Browns' ground attack. And the way Minshew looked last week, not sure how the Colts moved the ball against the Browns defense. But sometimes when you get like two obvious like unders or under teams together, and the defense is a good, we end up seeing points. But next game up, we're looking at Lions-Ravens. This should be a good one. Let's go to the power ratings first. I have both these teams rated pretty high. They're 7 and 8 respectively. Detroit, I have 3 points better than a league average team. And then I have the Ravens 4.5 points better. So you combine these, subtract the 3. I make Baltimore 1.5 on a neutral field, but they're playing in Baltimore, so I'll add the 1 point for home field advantage. So I make Baltimore minus 2.5. Weather is going to be a big factor in this game here. They're calling like 20 mile per hour winds on the forecast. There was a big service release on Baltimore on Monday and moved this line from the opener of 2 to 3. And a lot of the reason behind this Baltimore action is the injury report for Detroit. Both running backs, Demont and Gibbs, are hurt. Injuries up front on both sides of the ball. They got injuries at wide receiver. Lions are one of the more banged up teams. Ravens with a frustrating game last week versus the Titans. I had the over 40.5, Baltimore, Tennessee. They moved the ball up and down the field, but just couldn't punch it in. Baltimore goes 1 for 6 in the red zone, and combined between Baltimore and Tennessee just go 2 for 10 in the red zone. And the game stayed under by a half point. That was a tough one to lose there. Baltimore showed glimpses of what their offense wants to look like by spreading it out more. And they've been forced to go with like a more heavy personnel, which is like double tight end looks. Because of their offensive line injuries, they've needed to add extra blockers on the line. But as they get healthier, I think we start to see them air it out more under this Todd Monken offense. Maybe not this week because of the weather, but Lions have struggled against mobile quarterbacks. I think Lamar Jackson has a big game on the ground with his legs. I like Baltimore in this one, but I would have needed to get them below a field goal. And like I said, that big service, that pick service release on Monday that has a huge following, bet Baltimore and move this to 3. Goff looked good on the road last week. Under pressure he was. But can he do it again on the road versus Baltimore in weather conditions? That's the big question. Goff, last 5 years against the spread, 44 and 24. But Lions 13 and 3 straight up last 16 games, so they're cruising. Lions just continue to climb up the top of everybody's ratings and rankings. They're number 2 in total DVOA, which is a metric that takes into account of opponent strength, which is crazy. When you look at the QBs Detroit has beaten, it's not like a great list. But they've been overperforming against weaker opponents, beating QBs like Ritter, Jordan Love, Bryce Young, Baker Mayfield. And based on my ratings too, I have the Lions like playing a bottom 8 strength of schedule. Where are they? Yeah, 25th. So the 7th easiest strength of schedule with an average opponent strength of 1.3 points below league average. Baltimore's had it kind of easy as well, league average strength of schedule, but they've had so many injuries too to deal with. So let's keep it moving. Buffalo, New England. I have Buffalo as the second highest rated team. I'll go back to my ratings here. 6.75 points above a league average team. New England has dropped in my ratings pretty much every week. Currently have them at, I think, 3.25 points below a league average team. So on a neutral field, I'd have Buffalo 10 points better. But the game is in New England. We had home field advantage there. I'll give New England a 1.5. So that makes Buffalo minus 8.5. That's my number on the game. This total opened around 43, depending on what book you go by, and it's currently at 40 or 40.5. Pretty big adjustment there. But Patriots can't be relied on to score. It looks like some weather in this game, possibly forecast calling for some winds in the high teens, and the total's been bet down. A lot of bettors will gamble on weather reports and just auto bet any weather games under. Buffalo continues to slow, kind of be slow out the gate to start games. If you look at their EPA numbers in the first quarter alone, they rank 15th, but in the second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter combined, they're number 2 overall. Not sure how that, what's up with that, them being so slow out the gate. I've talked a lot this season so far, and even in the Bills team preview I did before the season started about them changing up their offense and, drafting tight end Dalton Kincaid, going 2 tight end sets, making their offense less predictable, which is what they did in weeks 1 through 4. But against the Giants, they completely went away from that and went back to their old ways. I didn't see Kincaid on the field once. I don't have his snap counts in front of me, but it has to be low. Bills offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey had a rough post-game press conference. Reporters weren't letting him get away with anything, grilling him about why Josh Allen's in shotgun on 4th and short, why the offense has turned so predictable. Now, I don't pretend to know more than coaches or coordinators, but wonder why they've gone away from what was working so well with the 3 the heavy personnel there. Regardless of what formation they run out of this week, it shouldn't really matter. The ratings and betting markets have officially crashed on New England. There's no value on them from a numbers perspective. I bet them last week +3 versus the Raiders, and they found a way to underperform market expectation. New England defense just has so many injuries to key players. Their best players actually are hurt. But it hasn't really even been extremely noticeable yet because they face Derek Carr and a combo of Jimmy G and Brian Hoyer. And even still, their defense didn't look great, but now they get a real test, against Josh Allen. They should get exposed here. I think now New England's the only team yet to score 20 points in the league. All right, let's keep it going. I got a little bit of a cold here. I apologize if I sound stuffed up. Another game with potential weather here. Commanders, Giants. Weather in the forecast. We've seen the total has been brought down, but I think this might be a bit of an over adjustment here. MetLife Stadium, where the Giants play, is a stadium that's not really impacted by wind. It's got giant concrete walls that can block the wind. I currently have the Giants as the lowest rated team in the league at 7 points below a league average team. I make the Commanders 3 points below a league average team, which would just make Washington -3 in this game. The Giants lost 4 straight. They have the worst point differential in the league at -96. So when you have 2 negative teams, I want to make sure everyone understands how to read these power ratings. When you have 2 negative teams like this, you just subtract them, which would make Washington -4, but you have to factor in the home field advantage, which I give the Giants 1 point for. So my number here is Washington -3. And then the point here is you look to compare it to the line, and that's pretty much in line with where the current sportsbooks have them. Tough spot for the Giants here. Huge letdown potential after Giants head coach Brian Daboll went all in last week against his former team in Buffalo. You could see the emotion on him on the sideline, and the Giants played hard, came down to the wire. Giants still haven't named a official starter as of this recording, but it doesn't really matter in my opinion. If it's Tyrod Taylor or Danny Dimes, it could be Tom Brady in his prime behind this offensive line. They ain't doing anything, especially against a Washington D line that's probably the most talented, but might not play like it. They've been underperforming all year. Washington defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio just hasn't got his defense to play up to expectations. They should be better as a unit. In theory, this game should be a big mismatch. Washington's D-line versus the Giants O-line. We'll see how that plays out. Keep it going here. We got Cardinals, Seahawks. There was some 9s and 8.5s available on Monday, but the market thought that was too many points, and Arizona got some betting support earlier in the week, wiping out all the 9s and 8.5s. Arizona's been a good team to bet against last few weeks, but I think we now know who this Arizona team is, and they are who we thought they were going into the season. This was a team who had a regular season win total of 4.5, and then when Dobbs got announced as a starter, the win total for Arizona got bet down to 3.5. We're starting to see betting lines on Arizona reflect that team everyone thought they'd be before the season, especially now with running back James Conner on IR. He was able to take a lot of pressure off of Dobbs. I bumped Seattle up on my ratings despite them losing to Cincinnati last week. It was probably the most misleading box score of any game in Week 6, Seattle versus Cincy. Seattle finished with 5.4 yards per play. That was 1.4 yards per play more than Cincy, so they outgained them. And listen to how some of these Seattle drives ended. I made a note of this. First and goal at Cincy 4-yard line ended in a pick in the end zone. First and goal, Cincy 5-yard line, they kicked the field goal. First and goal, Cincy 7-yard line, turnover on downs. First and goal at the Cincy 1-yard line, turnover on downs. Those drives swung massively in Cincy's favor. Seattle just 1-5 total in red zone touchdown conversions in that game. But really the real reason for the bump up for Seattle is they're finally getting healthy on both sides of the ball, and we're starting to see some changes on their O-line as they get healthier. Similar to what I talked about with Baltimore, the Seahawks don't need tight end blocking help as much now. In the preseason, they ran a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, but then they lost both starting tackles and had to use dual tight ends to help with blocking up front. This past week versus Cincy, we saw Lockett, Metcalf, and then Jackson Smith-Njigba all involved. I talked about JCN possibly getting more involved in the quick game preview I did in the Discord, and he finally had a decent game going over his receiving props. And maybe more importantly, the Seahawks finally have their secondary intact. Last week was the first game they had their entire defensive backfield on the field together. Adams and Diggs at safety, Trey Brown and Rick Woolen at cornerbacks, and then Devin Witherspoon at nickel. All healthy, and Seattle's already been solid against the run, but now this secondary unit's healthy. We could see this defense climb up the rankings here. All right, moving on. We got Steelers, Rams. Let's look at the power ratings here first. Steelers, I have 2.75 points below a league average team. And then the Rams, slightly above league average here with a 0.25 points above league average. When you have a negative rated team and a positive rated team, you simply just add them together, which would make the Rams -3 on a neutral field. The Rams are at home, but they have very little home field advantage there. Might even be more Steeler fans there at the game. So I'll go with a 0.5 point for home field advantage. And that makes LA -3, which pretty much, unfortunately, aligns with the number now at most sports books. This was Rams -3.5, but both running backs now um, for the Rams are expected to miss. Kyron Williams and Ronnie Rivers, both out. They also had their top cornerback, Deron Kendrick, get arrested, which I read just recently. I think he's facing a hammer charge, felony weapons or something, I think, which I don't blame him in LA. They love robbing athletes and entertainers out there. So in this case, it's probably better to be caught with it than without it. But yeah, Rams are expected to have several starters miss, and the big one, of course, is running back Kyron Williams. He's been a big part of what has made this Rams offense go. And remember, they traded away Cam Akers, so it's not like they have a ton of depth here at running back. I talked about this in the intro. This is basically the only game with the over getting action. In the last 3 weeks, Rams totals have been bet up at least 3 points from the opener to close. They're just pegged as a dead nuts over team. Last 2 weeks, tons of over money came in, and both games stayed under the past 2 weeks. And even with this game being bet up on the total, it's still a lot lower than any previous Rams totals. And that's obviously because Pitt is such an under team, but their offense should be getting back wide receiver Deontay Johnson and Anthony McFarland, who's like a gadget guy on offense. I initially wanted to bet the over in this game. The Steelers' weakness is their secondary, which is exactly where the Rams get busy at, especially with Cooper Kupp back. Having the chance to bet the over on the lowest total for the Rams game all season seems good, but that means I'm basically betting on the Steelers' offense and needing Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada to do something. The line may have moved too much now as well. Maybe team total is a good look. I also think the Rams defense is a bit overrated. They've caught a ton of breaks this year, and their numbers look way better than they should, in my opinion. But they're going to have a big edge in this game up front defensively with their D-line versus the Pitt O-line. Only a couple games left here. Let's keep it moving. We got Chargers, Chiefs. This should be a good one. Interesting betting splits here. If we look at the public betting percentages, it looks like the Chargers are getting lopsided bets and money on the spread, but KC is getting all the money on the money line. And it kind of makes sense, too. Chargers are always competitive. They've only lost by more than 6 points 3 times since the start of last year. So if KC wins and covers, it'd be only the 4th time the Chargers have lost by 6 or more points since the beginning of last year. I have KC rated as the 3rd best team in the league, behind only the Bills and 49ers. I make KC 6.25 points better than league average. I have the Chargers, where are they 1.25 points better than league average. So you got 2 positive rated teams. We just subtract them and left at KC -5 if they played on a neutral field, which they aren't, of course. I give Arrowhead Stadium 1.5 points of home field advantage. So my number here, KC -6.5 for this game. And KC, they're kind of becoming like an under team. They get a lead, then sit on the ball, run out the clock. I don't think that's going to work here, though, in this game. Chargers should be able to keep pace and force Andy Reid and Mahomes to keep scoring. I lean over the total here, both teams averaging 25 points per game, and that's with the Chargers offense kind of struggling. I don't think Herbert's 100%. I think he's playing with an injury or something, and, no Mike Williams, the wide receiver there for the Chargers, has made this offense a little less efficient. All right. Green Bay, Denver. What do we got here? This is an ugly one here. Green Bay off an ugly loss to the Raiders on Monday night, and then they go on a bye week last week. I think they catch Denver here, who has KC on deck again next week. My power rating on this game, I have Green Bay 0.75 points below. No, sorry, I was looking at the Buccaneers there. 1.25 points below a league average team here. And then Denver, where's Denver? 3.5 points below a league average team. So basically, I make Green Bay almost 1 -1 or 0.75 points below. Favored over the Broncos. I like the situational aspect of this game here. Denver's been a team like where even struggling offenses, get right against. And with Green Bay coming off a bye, I think they put together a solid game plan and get the win here. And it's crazy, all the distractions this team's been going through. Everyone loves shitting on them. um, you know, Head coach Sean Payton's play call sheet getting blown up on national TV. Russell Wilson's playbook wristband. How many times have we ever seen the broadcast zoom in on things like this? Only Denver. All right, this one should be maybe the game of the week, or has game of the week potential. Dolphins lost the first quarter to Carolina 14-0, and then won the next three quarters 42-7. Only points Carolina scored after that 14-point first quarter was a pick six thrown by Dolphins backup quarterback Mike White, who came in the game during scrub time because Dolphins were up so much. I think Miami might have been looking ahead to this game, and then after the first quarter against Carolina, they realized they had a game versus Carolina before playing Philly. I have both these teams rated pretty closely. I have Miami 1 full point better if this game was played on a neutral field. So when we factor in home field advantage, I have Philly as a half-point favorite. And keep in mind, this number isn't adjusted for any injuries either. Philly's pretty banged up. Lane Johnson on the offensive line, huge loss there. His on-off splits are significant on how well the offense performs with him on the field compared to when he's off the field. Philly also has cluster injuries in the secondary. So with me making Philly minus a half a point, and the current line, Philly minus 2.5, I do show value on Miami. I actually bet Miami on Monday +3 at minus 125. I bought a half point up to 3. Miami has the number one offense in the league, and their offensive identity is based around like their dynamic play design in the passing game, creating mismatches, perfect route running from their receivers. But a lot of what they're able to do in the passing game is set up by way of the run game. They rank second in offensive EPA per rush. Here's the problem with this matchup from Miami. Eagles' defensive line ranks second in run-stop win rate. Their overall numbers against the run are 7th or 8th, depending on what metric you go by. Philly's run defense just completely deleted Jets running back Breece Hall from the game last week, a running back that came into the game, probably the hottest running back in the league, and he was just eliminated from the game. I think Mike McDaniel, he's going to have to adjust his game plan. Not going to try and guess what he's going to do, but have to believe he's going to try to avoid running into the teeth of that defensive front. Maybe use the passing game as an extension of the run game. Jets had success passing to running backs out of the backfield. Philly lost to the Jets, so this should, in theory, be a bounce-back spot. But Philly has played opponents where they, can get out 2 leads and then just sit on the ball and run out the clock. Jets were the first team they couldn't really run on. And this forced Philly and their offense into passing 45 times. That's not their pathway to success. Now, I don't think Miami's going to be able to blank them on the run game, but in a similar way, I think Philly will need to pass more to keep pace. And, the Philly offense just isn't the same as last year. Losing their offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, has a lot to do with that, too. All right, we made it to Monday Night Football here. We got the Niners, Vikings. It's all one-way betting action on this one, on San Fran. Looks like nobody wants anything to do with the Vikings, as San Fran's getting over 80% of the bets and money in this game. I have San Fran rated as the best overall team in the league here. 7.5 points better than league average, which is where I actually have the Vikings is right at 0, which is league average. So on a neutral field, I'd make San Fran minus 7.5, but the game's in Minnesota, so I'll give them 1 point there. So this makes San Fran minus 6.5 in this game on my number, which is pretty much kind of in line with the odds makers now. San Fran coming off that loss to the Browns should be a bounce back spot. But San Fran's had it pretty easy all year. Going into week 6 was about as bad as a spot as it could be traveling. I was telling everyone in the Discord that San Fran was in a bad spot, traveling west to east for an early start time, playing in weather versus a very physical Browns team. They knocked McCaffrey and Debo out of the game. We saw Purdy under real pressure. That Browns D-line just lived in San Fran's backfield. The pregame fight also actually impacted the game. It had the refs on edge, so they were just throwing flags on everything. San Fran has a ton of players on with a questionable designation this week. Trent Williams, McCaffrey, Debo, who else? Greenlaw. These are Pro Bowlers, not just some random guys. This line will absolutely move based on the status of some of these players. We're actually starting to see some of the books already move down from 7.5 to 7 with anticipation of the Niners' injury report. Even with the injury, San Fran looks really appealing on a fast track inside on a dome surface. And this Vikings offense isn't what it was in the first few weeks of the season. Their offense looks completely different without Justin Jefferson. Nobody's been able to step into the number one wide receiver role for them. They only scored 19 points versus the Bears last week. And San Fran's biggest weakness on defense is really stopping the run. Minnesota doesn't run the ball. Defensively for Minnesota, Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator there, has been dialing back the blitz. He still blitzes at the highest rate, but the blitzes haven't been getting home, and the defensive backs are just left on an island. Minnesota is almost becoming more of an under team now, too, compared to what they were weeks 1, 2, and 3. Vikings just 3-8-1 against the spread last 12 games, 0-6 against the spread last 6 at home. I think that's going to do it for this one. Almost 40 minutes. If you watch to the end, I appreciate you watching. Until next time, good luck with your bets.